Dzień dobry Państwu, przed mikrofonem Marek Bober, a gościem Radia Polonii 2000 jest dzisiaj ex-Federal and State Prosecutor and Illinois Gaming Board Attorney, Donna Moore. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
And you are running for Cook County State's Attorney Office in March Democratic primary.
Correct.
And some people say you are a dark horse in that race. Do you like the term?
I don't care what they call me as long as they vote for me. But I think originally they said dark horse to mean that I was an underdog. And what has happened in the past 6 or 8 months is that my campaign and what I stand for has really been embraced by the voters, so much so that is the reason why the Democratic Party got nervous and did a second slating this past week.
So the question is simple. Why did you decide to run for those office?
I decided to run because we need to fix the office and fix the criminal justice system. I think everybody in our county is dismayed by reading the newspaper on a Monday morning and seeing that we had 10, 20, 30 shootings sometimes over a weekend and a death toll of 8 killings. And when you read that day in and day out and you see that nothing is being done, I'm a parent, like a lot of people in our community. I decided that I had the skills to do something about it. Former prosecutor, former chief counsel of the gaming board. I had management responsibilities. I've been in private practice where I've continued to do civil litigation and trial work. And I decided that I could fix the state's attorney's office because people now don't trust it to do the right thing and help fix the whole criminal justice system.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your experience?
So I went to Georgetown Law School, and I'm from here. I grew up in Evanston. So when I was finished with law school, I came back home, and my first job was in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. And there I rose through the trial ranks, if you will. And I was a felony trial attorney over at 26 in California, where I tried hundreds of bench trials, and I probably tried about 15 or so jury trials. I also had the good fortune of arguing many times in our state appellate court and in our state Supreme Court. When I decided to leave the state's attorney's office, I went over to the U.S. attorney's office. And again, in the criminal division, where I probably tried another 10 or so juries. And I also got to argue in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. And during that time, I also taught law school, trial advocacy class. So I taught young law students how to try cases. And then I went on with my career again to be general counsel for a state agency. And then I've been in private practice where I continue my trial work and my advocacy work for those who can't afford a lawyer.
Mm-hmm. And I quote, "I'm not a politician who wants a job. I'm a prosecutor who wants to do the job." What specific decision you're going to make?
That's true. Both of my opponents have only been in the public sector.
How many opponents do you have?
I have 2.
2.
Yes.
Anita Alvarez and?
And a woman who was handpicked by Tony Preckwinkle. Her name is Kim Fox.
So, specific decisions.
So the specific decisions in the office come from my breadth of experience, not just tunnel vision from only being a prosecutor. And we need to do a number of things. First, we have to take a look at our bonding recommendations to judges. Judges ultimately decide, but we need to look at what we're requesting for bond. We need to take a look at our indictment policies. Who we indict, are we being consistent in who and how we indict? And make sure that we're indicting correctly with the right charges. We've had a history in the past 7 years of certain people being indicted for a crime and other people not being indicted for the same crime. Certain folks being charged with a certain crime that ends up being the wrong charge, and so we lose the case. So that's a very, very important part of the office. And then the other thing that you have to look at are your sentencing recommendations. We recommend to the judge is the final decision maker, but again, we want to make sure that our sentences are fair, are consistent throughout, that we're requesting equal time for equal crimes, if you will. And those are three things that I think are not being done in the office right now.
Mm-hmm. And you said once, our justice system is in trouble. It will take independent leadership to fix it. What do you mean by independent?
It's very important that we remember that the state's attorney's role as the top prosecutor in our county is to prosecute crime no matter who commits it, whether it's a police officer, whether it's a lawyer, some kid walking down the street. And the reason why you have to be independent is because you have to reach those charging decisions without outside influence. And the problem with both of my opponents is that they are tied to what I call political bosses. So if someone wants you to hide or bury a videotape, you bury a videotape. If somebody doesn't want their child charged, you don't charge them. If somebody wants special treatment of a relative or whatever, that's what happens. And so what you get are inconsistent policies. And when you have inconsistent charging decisions, the public begins not to trust. And that's what's happened over the past 7 years. We can go back and look at cases where wrongful convictions haven't been admitted to, and there's a fight in the office to let people out of prison who aren't guilty. We've had situations where politicians' family members weren't indicted, but an African-American young man on the South Side is indicted for a one-punch murder. Those are the kinds of things, police officer indicted, but for involuntary manslaughter, he's found not guilty, or his case gets directed out, a directed verdict. You don't even get to guilt or innocence because the wrong charge. It should have been a murder charge. So all these kinds of mistakes and judgment issues are because of outside influence on the office. And it really needs to be an independent decision maker in that office.
There is so much talk about situation in a police department and on the South Side. What's your opinion on that?
The police department has lost the trust on the South Side and the West Side of the communities in those areas that it is policing. And that's a problem because you need to have the trust of the community. It makes witnesses come forward, victims come forward, and believe that you are going to do the right thing. And most of our police officers, men and women, doing their job every day, keeping all of us safe. And that's, I appreciate what they do. They have a very tough job. But every so often, you get a bad apple. And if, in fact, a police officer breaks the law, we have to prosecute, because you have to prosecute crime no matter who commits it. They don't get a pass just because they wear a uniform. And in the past 7 years of the incumbent's term, a lot of these cases have been buried. And the community feels, I believe, on the South Side and West Side, primarily African-American communities, feel that they're being held to a different standard than a police officer. And they begin not to trust the police officers. And I think that is changed by having better training, joint training between the state's attorney's office and the police. And in that way, we can start to rebuild the community trust.
Superintendent Gary McCarthy stepped down. How about Anita Alvarez? What do you think?
I think that if I were state's attorney, I would step down because it is clear that the incumbent has lost the trust of the community. Having said that, we have an election in about 60 days. And during that process, the public gets to choose who it wants to be its next state's attorney. I have reservations because if, in fact, Ms. Alvarez were to step down, the person who gets to appoint the interim state's attorney is Toni Preckwinkle. And I would rather have the voters choose.
One more quote. Nobody is above the law, whether it's police or prosecutor. Right now, it's selective. What do you mean by selective?
Well, we have been discussing that if somebody goes out on the street and shoots a gun at somebody and kills them, they get charged with murder. And yet, when you deal with a police officer, you have to determine if their actions were justified, if it was a justified use of force. And if it is found not to be, then the officer has to get charged the same way a plainclothes individual would be charged. We have to be able to rise above uniform, rise above race, rise above politics, rise above money when we make indictment decisions. And that goes back to the independence of the office.
Proszę Państwa, w studiu Radia Polonii 2000 jest także były dziennikarz Kanału 2, John Davis. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having us.
Why we should vote for Don?
First of all, as a former journalist who dealt in facts, I think that the voters should look at factually who Donna Moore is and judge on that alone the strengths of her to be independent and impartial, to be fair and honest and decent in her application of the law as a prosecutor. I know Donna Moore to be a above board, high standards, decency, one who is looking to, as she says, prosecute not on the basis of color or race, not on the basis of uniform, or political cachet, but because it's the letter of the law. We follow the law, we follow the evidence, and she applies that to indictments and convictions. But she is also very, very humane. I mean, she has represented people who have, who've been charged with crimes, and we realize that based on her representation of these individuals, they've been found to be not guilty, or they've gotten exonerated, or they've gotten some other kind of dispensation of their cases that are favorable to them.
John, do you have any problems working for Donna?
Oh, not at all. No, Donna Moore is a joy to work for. Again, because, and I've worked with other candidates, but none has been more honest, decent, caring, and loyal to what she says and does than Donna Moore.
Donna, what's your experience with Polish community?
I have a very close relationship, I feel, with the Polish community. First, many of my clients are businessmen in the Polish community. And so I've had the pleasure of working with two in particular for about the last 6 or 8 years. And more importantly, a very close friend of our family is a Polish woman who came over here about 25 years ago, sole support of her family. She has 2 kids. And she ran into some issues licensing issues, in part because English is her second language, and in part because government sometimes is a very hard group of people to navigate. And, that teaches me a lot about how I want to be as a state's attorney and how I want my office to function. But I had a difficult time. I helped her. It was a pro bono case. Make sure that everything was in compliance and that she was able to get her license back so she could continue working. And it took a bit, but it made me realize that our government isn't easy to maneuver around, especially if English isn't your primary language, and that government as a whole, the people who are in government sometimes treat the folks that pay their salaries without much respect. And, it's those kinds of experiences that make me want to run an office that is professional, that does excellent prosecutions, but that we also return a call that we get from a voter of Cook County, because they're the ones that put us in office and they're the ones that I am responsible to. And so my experiences in helping folks in the Polish community, either because of my friendships or because of my business relationships, has given me a very close feeling to the community.
Mm-hmm. And one more time, John, why Polish people, Polish community, supposed to vote for Dana?
Because, first of all, Dana is, it wants to be fair and decent to every community. I mean, the Polish community, has a large block of voters.
Right.
But very few people really appealed to Polish voters to the extent that they are excited about coming out. Once they hear Dana's platform and her ideas and proposals for changing the culture of that office, of the state's attorney's office, and enlisting the help of community members in the Polish community, I think that they will vote for her with no question. We need the Polish vote. We respect the Polish vote, and but we want them to come out in large numbers.
Do some meetings with Polish community.
Absolutely. We would love to engage the Polish community in any event, anywhere, anytime, because that's how much we value. As you recall, when Harold Washington became mayor, the one thing he wanted to do more than anything else is to bring together, an African-American Polish alliance with Aurelia Paczynski, led by Roman, of course, her father, and because he understood the value.
30 years ago.
I know, but still, a lot of Polish voters, they get a little docile, they get a little quiet, they don't come out, they don't get inspired. Once they listen to Dana Moore, I think they will become inspired enough to turn out in large numbers for the March 15th primary.
And we have some excellent volunteers from the Polish community that have been helping us do petitions that we needed signatures to get on the ballot, that are helping now doing our phone calling and our canvassing. So because of my relationships and my friendships within the community, I've been able to attract a lot of wonderful volunteers. And as I say, it just builds, because I think that what I want are voters who educate themselves about the qualities of the candidates they're voting for, and just don't take a party line about, oh, well, some Democratic leader tells me to vote. I view the Polish community as being very independent in its thought, and because of that, I think that I will garner a lot of support in the community.
And last question, in some points, what should be done to improve our justice system?
Well,
number one,
if it were that easy, what has to be done to improve our justice system, number one, is we need better transparency. We need our voters to understand why we do certain things and why we don't do certain things. Now, people aren't always going to agree with you, but they need to understand, because right now they don't trust the system. And they don't trust the system because a lot of things get buried. And if they don't understand what's going on, you lose your trust. So to me, that's the most important thing is we need trust, and you get that through better leadership and better judgment. And the criminal justice system has a lot of moving parts. We have 128 different law enforcement agencies just within Cook County. And I'm not sure that any of them talk to each other. I'm not sure that we have really good meetings between the Cook County Board President and the state's attorney and the sheriff and the mayor and our congressional delegation, our chief judge, the chief judge at 26 and Cal, to have an effective criminal justice system. I'm not asking these people to like each other. I'm asking them to sit down at a table and do their job. And we don't have that.
Szanowni Państwo, w studiu Radia Polonii gościli przede wszystkim pan John Davis, a szczególnie pani Donna Moore, która ubiegała się o stanowisko Cook County State's Attorney.
Great, thank you.
Dziękuję.